School shootings. They're tragic, and unfortunately, they have been a part of America's fabric for many years. More than 87% of school shooters has been bullied by children and or adults or school administrations. On May 11th, 2018, such a shooting occurred when a young man felt that he was so bullied that although he was moved, he had to come back for revenge. Has the school districts learned, or is it set to happen again? Join me as I examine the case of the Highland High School shooting and the continuous downfall of the Palmdale School District on this episode of True Crime, Authors, and Extraordinary People.
Welcome to True Crime, Authors, and Extraordinary People, the podcast where we bring two passions together. The show that gives new meaning to the old adage, truth is stranger than fiction, and reminding you that there is an extraordinary person in all of us. Here is your host, David McClam.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome to another episode of True Crime, Authors, and Extraordinary People. Of course, I'm your man, David McClam. Hey, if you guys haven't already, make sure you follow us on all of our social media. One link to a link tree will get you everywhere you need to go pertaining to the show. All right, before we jump into today's case, just a couple of things to take care of with you guys. First of all, I know it was a surprise I didn't tell you who it was, but I hope you did go and listen to the episodes of Amanda Blackwood and Nikki LaCroce. Amanda, of course, was my author, and Nikki LaCroce was my extraordinary person. If you haven't checked out these two episodes, they are a must. They are some of the most extraordinary episodes I think I have ever recorded with two extraordinary people, and I think you will learn a lot from their story and their journey. So make sure to check them out. Also, one of the projects that we've been working on, I know we've talked about Legends in Blue. That's still to come, just put on hold right now because we had another project that took precedence. So my partner and I, LaDonna Humphrey, who is a best-selling true crime author as well as an investigator, have joined forces, and we're going to bring to you Extinguished. Extinguished is going to be a long-form podcast where we're going to talk about the missing and murdered. Long form because we're going to take one case and take 4 weeks to do that. A lot of that's going to be because over there, you're probably going to hear from some of the victims or some of the survivors or some of the family members as we have interviews pouring in. If you want to get a glimpse of what that looks like visually, there is a new show coming out called Murder in the 21st. It will drop sometime this month, but you can catch our episode on November 10th. You will see LaDonna interviewing the wife of one of the murder victims in the super bike murders. Then you can continue to listen to our episodes as we'll be shooting those out one case per month. You don't want to miss that. So I hope you tune in for Extinguished, and I will tell you more about that as time gets closer. All right, so today's case, as you probably heard coming in, well, we're going to talk about another high school shooting. The difference between this high school shooting and many of the other ones that you have heard is because it was really close to home. It was close to me. My daughter actually went to this high school at that time. And the other half of that is the downfall or the continuing downfall of the Palmdale School Districts. We're going to talk about that. I'm going to tell you a little story at the end about what my son is going through now, as well as my daughter almost committing suicide on a couple of occasions because of this school district. The school district still hasn't learned, which is why the story of my son comes up, to the point that the administration, the principal, even decided to physically threaten me directly in front of his boss. And we'll tell you exactly what happened with that. Oh, we're going to drop names. I'm going to tell you the district. I'm going to tell you what's going on, because this is what parents need to know And then, since I was openly threatened, bodily harmed by this principal, I'm going to answer that today in my way. And I'm going to tell you what I have done about 3 of them, which I don't think anything's going to come to fruition, but we'll see. So let's get into Highland High School shooting. I don't know if you've ever been a part of something like this. And as a parent, I hope that you never will. Of course, I came out of this unscathed, where many, Parkland and Columbine and so on and so forth, have not. I'm going to tell you about this school shooting today, and I'm going to tell you what the districts is covering up. Now, before we get into this, let me tell you how the school district works. Before anybody comes in, there's 2 separate school districts. Well, really, to me, there's still one. So you have the Palmdale School District, which unfortunately my son is still in. And then you have the Antelope Valley Union High School District. The difference there is the Palmdale School District handles elementary to middle school. When you graduate there and you go off to high school, you are then dumped into the Antelope Valley Union High School District. Let me make this perfectly clear for people who don't live here to understand that why I say it's exactly the same district. Because every high school in the AV, Antelope Valley, falls to this school district. I guess it's their way of breaking up one district from the other so you don't have so many kids. But even what I consider to be the local high school here, which is right down the road from the school my son goes to, which is Sage, Palmdale High, is up underneath the Antelope Valley Union High School District. They are one in the same. One feeds into the other. So if you have a problem child in the Palmdale School District, that child graduates and goes to high school, you're going to have the same problem child when he comes to Antelope Valley Union High School District. Just want to make sure you guys understand how that works when I start talking about the school districts and how they want to hide things. In this school shooting, there are things that the school districts wanted to hide, more specifically the Antelope Valley Union High School District now. And I'm going to tell you exactly what that was. All right, before we get into it, I just want to say my daughter Madison was supposed to be here with me today. Unfortunately, she has gotten sick now for the second time since she started school there at college. And I feel bad for her because this is the first time she's been really sick and away from home. So she was going to be here with me today because she wanted to kind of tell you in her own words what the school district has done to her and the disdain that she has for what is now doing to her brother. But unfortunately, she was not able to make it tonight. So I will speak for her because I know what she was going to tell you in Madison. Hope you feel better. But you will hear from her real soon because there's a case that we are going to do together in the future. So I look forward to that. All right, so let me tell you what happened. So just imagine you're a parent going to work and you're getting off on the off-ramp. You're right there at work and your phone rings. Well, that's what happened to me on May 11th, 2018. My daughter, Madison, was on the other end of the phone and she was in mass hysterics. And all I can make out was a bunch of gibberish. And I said, you need to calm down. I can't understand what you're saying. And she said, Dad, there's been a school shooting. My heart sunk to the bottom of my feet. And the first thing I wanted to know was, where are you at? Are you okay? Because in my mind, she's already inside the school. This shooting has taken place and she's up underneath a table or a closet or something. And she says, well, Dad, I never made it into the school. The bus was pulling into the school when they were notified that there was a school shooting, and they hurried up and rushed the buses to leave and to go to the Antelope Valley Mall, which is a few miles away from the school. So the students on buses didn't go inside the school, and they was able to get away from that, where they didn't call parents and let the parents know that there had been an incident and that they was going to get informed that they needed to come to the mall to pick their kids up and when they could do that. The worst thing to tell a parent when this thing's happening is don't come. What do you think parents are going to do? And I'm already calling my boss saying, hey, man, I'm going to have to go home because there's a school shooting at Highland. What you're seeing on the news right now is my daughter's school. And so my wife and I had talked. Our best friend Connie had a kid that went there as well. So they all were going to meet up together to pick up the children. And she says, nothing for you to worry about. We're going to go get the kids. They're safe at the mall. But as a dad, though, I'm already a wreck. And so my boss is like, you need to go ahead and assess today, figure out what you need to do, and then let me know. So let me share with you exactly what took place on the morning of May 11, 2018. This article was written about 1 week later on May 15th, and it is taken from Channel 4 News here in LA, which is NBC. So here's what their article said. A 14-year-old former student was charged Tuesday with attempted murder and other counts stemming from a shooting at Highland High School in Palmdale that left a 15-year-old boy wounded this week. The teenage defendant, who denied the charges, faces 2 counts of attempted murder, 6 counts of assault with an assault weapon, and 1 count of possessing a firearm in a school zone, according to the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office. The shooting at 7 a.m. last Friday on the campus in the 39,000 block of 25th Street West was initially attributed to an active shooter, prompting a massive law enforcement response. About 30 minutes after the high school shooting was reported, the sheriff's department responded to what turned out to be an unfounded call of gunshots being heard at the nearby Manzanita Elementary School campus in the 38,600 block of 33rd Street East. The injured 15-year-old boy, who was driven to a hospital by a parent who was dropping her daughter off at school, suffered a gunshot wound to his shoulder area, Los Angeles County Sheriff Jim McDonald said. There were no reports of any other injuries. The suspect was taken into custody at a Vaughn's grocery store about a mile from the campus, and McDonald said the sheriff's department was contacted by an off-duty Los Angeles Police Department officer who initially apprehended the suspect after being contacted by the boy's father about 7:40 a.m. A Highland High School student told reporters he saw the suspect emerge from a bathroom with a rifle-type weapon, which he randomly pointed at people. The student said the suspect looked at him and told him to run, which he did, shouting at other students to do the same. McDonald identified the weapon as an SKS with 7.62 rounds. The rifle was recovered from a field between the school and where the boy was apprehended. A man said his wife was dropping their daughter off at the school when the wounded student ran up to her car shouting, he shot me, I don't know why, he shot me. The woman told the boy to get into the car and she drove him to a nearby hospital, her husband said, adding that his wife was told the boy didn't know who shot him. The suspect fired about 10 rounds and told his father that he had fired into the air, McDonald said, but a motive was unclear. All schools in the area were placed on lockdown while law enforcement swarmed the high school campus and nervous parents began gathering nearby, anxiously hoping to retrieve their children. The lockdown at Highland High School was lifted around 10:20 a.m. and students were released to their parents, and McDonald said the sheriff's Palmdale station fielded nearly 100 calls in the minutes after the shooting. The suspect used to attend Highland High School, but his family transferred him to another school, officials said. Now let's get into it. I'm going to tell you today what really happened in this shooting, because I know what happened because, well, my daughter went to that school, and I've talked to several other people that was there that morning, and I know exactly what took place. I'm going to tell you exactly what the Antelope Valley Union High School District, just like the Palmdale School District, wants to hide from this report. And I want to thank NBC because NBC was the only one that did not make him look like the vigilante that they want you to believe this kid was. And before I tell you what happened, I do want to say, I don't think anybody should have got shot. I don't condone any violence. But this is a cautionary tale of why we should not bully people and why I think that because nobody in these 2 school districts has learned anything, that this is going to happen again right here in Palmdale. So what basically happened on this morning is, yes, this kid who 5 years later, he should be about 18 now, We still don't know what the name of the kid who did the shooting is. They have never released that. He was due back in court on that June 28th to face these charges. So I can't tell you what happened to him. I don't know if he got convicted. I don't know if he went to juvenile hall. They released nothing. It's almost like this case came and it died and people buried it and nobody wants to talk about it, even though it's important, which is why I'm talking about it. So basically what happened was this kid was bullied by the guy that he shot. The name of the kid that got shot is named Robert Ruiz Dominguez. Now, the only reason why we know the name of the kid that got shot is because of the fact that his mother sued the school district, or attempted to at least, for failure to protect her son. And he's on camera talking and saying things like he doesn't know why he got shot, but he and his sister were the ones that was targeted. They tell you this is not a targeted offense. It was very targeted. And if you listen to what I read, you could tell that, but I'll break it down further for you. So I want you to imagine this in your mind, and then you think about what you think happened, or if it's credible what I'm saying as I tell you this story. So the young man that did the shooting was transferred to another school called Quartz Hill. Quartz Hill is across town, probably about a good 20, 30 minutes drive from where Highland High School is. He was transferred there about a month before this took place. Whatever he thinks Robert Dominguez or his sister did to him, he construed that as bullying, and it ate at him so bad that he decided that he was going to go to Highland High School on the night of May 10th. And he was going to stay all night long in the football field outside. Now, this may be funny to some of you, but it was about 32 or so degrees that night here in good old Palmdale. And that, my friends, is cold. It's shivering cold. You want to be bundled up in a jacket, have a beanie on, maybe some gloves if you're real sensitive to cold. That's how cold it is here at 32 degrees. I believe it even frosted that night. This kid stayed all night long inside of that football field. At about 7 o'clock the next morning, May 11th, he proceeded and made his way into the school. As you heard, he was spotted in the bathroom because that's where he went. NBC News is the only one that had the guts to tell you that he didn't go shooting up at the school. He didn't shoot up everybody because he told students to get out. I repeat what the student said. The student said the suspect looked at him and told him to run, which he did, shouting at other students to do the same. So some of the mass hysteria that they're saying that happened because of the fact that he was shooting a gun was actually happening before he even shot a bullet, because he had the gun, but he told everybody, y'all need to run. So they ran. He found Robert Dominguez and his sister on one of the benches there where the school kids get together and do their homework. I'll try to paint this picture so you've never been inside Highland. Highland is kind of a big open campus. When you walk through those doors, you get so many feet in, there are tables and there's bleachers and chairs or places that the kids go and they sit, they do their homework. This is where they kind of gather and congregate in the morning. Robert Dominguez and his sister was in such a spot. He took aim at Robert Dominguez and his sister and he pulled the trigger. Now, they say that Robert Dominguez got shot in the shoulder. I've seen the injury. He was not shot in the shoulder. He was shot in the arm, right above where his wrist would be. It was a gnarly injury. It ripped through him. I believe he had surgery, and I think they even stated that he has a plate in his arm now where he was hit. His sister made it out unscathed. After he shot the bullets, he didn't even wait to see if anybody got hit or dropped. The kid turned around, ran out of the school with the gun, threw the gun in the wooded area, made his way to Vaughn's. Now, there's been two different stories about the Vaughn's thing. One says that his father called a friend, and the other one says that he called the friend. But I believe it the way NBC has reported it, that the boy called his father, told his father he shot his gun up in the air. And then the father called the friend that was LAPD, and the friend came and picked him up, and then he turned himself in. You tell me what you think. Because I've been facing ridicule because I say he is not a school shooter in the traditional means and sense that we know. He targeted his people. He knew who he was going to shoot. He kicked several kids out before he did this. So he wasn't there to hurt everybody. He had an AK. So let's just look at the firearm that he had. If he was going to take out everybody in that school, he had the firepower to do so. Robert Dominguez would be dead. His sister would be dead if that's what he went to do, because it's just spraying the area. And let's face the facts, kids don't know how to shoot guns these days unless they have family members that take them out and they go hunting, but they're not using AKs to go hunting. So with him not know what he's doing, he could just pull, spray left and right and left. In my opinion, he is not the typical school shooter that we think of. And I know if anybody says that Harris and Klebold, the two famous shooters from Columbine, that they kicked out a couple of people. Yeah, they kicked out a couple of people. And then they proceeded to kill up the whole rest of the school. Those couple of people that Harris and Klebold kicked out, turns out was friends of theirs that they actually liked and felt like they did no harm to them. So they let them go. Everybody else was subject to what happened, and you know the end of that. Bullying is something that we should not be looking over, and we do. Now, according to Robert Dominguez, he has no idea why he was shot. So I went to my resident expert, Madison. After we found out who Robert Dominguez was, which to be honest with you, after all the searching I've done into this case, I finally found who he was, about a week or so before I decided that I was going to record this episode. Again, with Robert Dominguez being a minor at that time, the only reason we do know his name is because his mom was suing the school district, and he was all up on the news. So I sent the video I found to my daughter, and I says, Madison, do you know who this kid is? And her immediate response to me was, oh my goodness, him? And I said, that's Robert Dominguez. This is the kid that got shot that day at Highland. What do you know about him? And in my daughter's own words, she says that he was known to be a bully. She didn't find him nice because he was never nice to her. He didn't even know her and decided to call her a bitch one day as she was walking down the hallway. He was always in problems. He was always in somebody's office. So she stayed clear of him. Now, she said she didn't know his sister, but she knew him and stayed clear of him. So this kid, according not only to my daughter, but some other children as well, had a history of bullying people. And whatever happened between him and this young kid that did the shooting, it was overkill. It was so bad to where they moved him to another school and he came back. My daughter had problems when she first went to Highland as well. And I threatened to move her to Courts Hill. The only reason that I didn't was because her choir director, John Crocker, begged me to let her stay there. John Crocker is one of those good teachers out there in the world that we still have left. That if it wasn't for him, my daughter would not be where she is right now in her education and would not be pursuing her major in music right now over at California Baptist University. But he pretty much said to me, if I let her stay there, that they would be able to solve this problem. The one thing, folks, I can tell you about kids that get bullied is it's because I call it a small person syndrome. You're at home, you're getting bullied, you're getting beat, whatever the case is, by whoever that you can't take out yourself. So you decide to take that on the next best person that you can bully, that you can belittle, that you can beat up. If you look into the history of some of these kids who turn out to be bullies and that end up turning out where people come to shoot them, it's because something else is going on in their life that nobody cares about. And with the young lady that my daughter got into it with, after they squashed it, they became friends. We started finding out the horrificness that was behind her life. Her father was abusive. Her father was beating her mother. Her father was beating her. She was getting bullied by him. Then she would come to school and people that didn't understand what she was going to was making fun of her. So in turn, she turned around and became what? A bully. Once I started hearing her story and understanding what was going on, I said to my daughter Madison, I said, this is probably the real reason why she decided to bully you. But that can still have dangerous consequences. Now, my daughter went on with this young lady because Madison became a real friend to her, and she knew that she could trust Madison. So they became friends and had no problems. And in a lot of cases, Madison would protect her against all the rest of the kids that wanted to bully her and say, you need to leave her alone. So they became bosom buddies. This doesn't happen all the time. As funny as it sounds, my wife's best friend, Connie was my wife's bully in school. But let's face it, back when we were all in school, because my wife is in her 40s, so is Connie, back when we were all in school, nobody was really thinking about going to get a gun and coming back and shooting people. The worst that was going to happen to you is going to get pushed down and you're going to get a scrape. But that's not what's happening now. So this young man came back to get Robert Dominguez because of the fact that he had been bullied. And it ate at him and it festered and it was just so eating him so long that he says, I'm going to go back and I'm going to take him out. Now, I don't really think he went to take him out, though. If you look at the injury, you look at the weapon that he had, I think he maybe went back to scare him. I'm not even sure if he really meant to shoot or injure him. His sister walked away unscathed and he targeted both of them. So we have to think in our minds, was this young man really coming back to be a school shooter? Or was he coming back because he was bullied and nobody listened to him? While you think about that, let's get into a little bit of my story, what's going on with my son right now. And you'll see exactly what's happening with these school districts and why I say this is going to happen again. I'm just doing everything to make sure that my son is well-grounded, so it ain't him. That he understands he has a family member at home that's going to take up for him. And I preach to him every day, no matter what anybody does to you at that school, violence is not the answer. Well, what if I tell you his principal wanted to test that out on me? So let's kind of start from the beginning. I'm not going to go back over the long history. I'm just going to tell you what's happening with Jacob now. Because this history with him at Highland High School is long. Just like with my daughter, Madison. My daughter, Madison, is the most easiest person to get along with. Everybody that meets you will tell you that she's sweet. She never wants to get into a fight. She'll give you the shirt and the hat and the boots off her body if that means that it's going to do something for you. We never had a problem with Madison at all. But what if I told you I had to take this very warm, welcomed young girl and put her on suicide watch on 3 separate occasions because of this school district? And at the time, she went to school at Palmdale Learning Plaza, which is supposed to be like a charter school that's ran by the district, but it's not. So kind of like a private school within the school district system. She had a principal named Danny Kanga at that time. He's now moved on to be the chief academic officer in Palmdale School District. Now, my wife says, well, maybe Mr. Kanga has changed. Yeah, it's probably true. I bumped into Danny Kanga a couple of times and he says hi to me. He was extremely nice to my son. Okay, so I'm not going to sit here and badmouth the man and run him down and be like, he was just horrible. Maybe him and Madison, or maybe he was new, or maybe he just didn't want to listen to me. But when my son got to POP, he was extremely nice to Jacob. He liked Jacob. He let Jacob come in and read to him because Jacob was one of the smartest kids there. He actually had reading comprehension that was off the chain for a kid his age and his grade. And Danny Kanga liked to have Jacob come read to him. And Danny Kanga even said, if you go have a good day, I know you like to play drums, I'll take you in here and let you play drums. But when it came to my daughter, Danny Kanga did not listen to me. She had a boy that followed her all through school. And he bullied her all the time. And I was back and forth with Danny Kanga. And I finally just said, hey, when she gets tired, send her home because something's going to go down. And I'm not going to listen to it because I've tried to tell you several times that this boy's messing with her and you guys refuse to do anything about it. Well, that's exactly what happened. At the end of her 8th grade year, Madison finally got tired of this boy following her and touching her and bullying her that she socked the heck out of him. And he went running to tell the principal and the teacher. And I said, send her home. There ain't nothing I'm going to do to her because I've asked you to intervene with this several times. Until she got to Highland, that was the only problem Madison had. But then we had to contend with Jacob. So we'll just fast forward the story on to where Jacob is now, because I could be here all night telling you his history from first grade up, which is not pretty either. Let's just say that Jacob has 3 different concussions. 2 of them came from 2 of the schools in this district, which was Palm Tree Elementary, one called Oak Tree, a school that Jacob should never went to because vigilante kids go there. And what I mean by that is because these kids has been in jail for attempted homicide, attempted assault, aggravated assault, assault and battery. These are the roughest of the rough. Jacob was walked in that door one day. He was throwing a kid on the ground by a kid, hit his head, and the kid was banging his head into the ground. Concussion. Teacher told me there he couldn't protect Jacob at all. The other concussion came from a teacher at Palm Tree Elementary who decided to put his hands on my son. The third came from the school we're going to talk about now, Sage, which is where he goes to right now. So almost 3 years ago, Jacob attended Sage Academy. Sage is a magnet academy that it focuses on aeronautics, which is something that Jacob totally is not interested in, but it is a school that he is zoned to. When he went there in the end of 2019, beginning of 2020, he walked in with problems, and the principal there didn't care. He had kids cursing. He had kids doing drugs on the campus. My son came home with so many racial slurs, I've never even heard them in sentences like he was telling me he heard them in that day. He had gotten beaten up by 2 or 3 kids, and it continued to happen. I had many a conversation with the school principal, including reading some of the reviews that was there, and the school principal did not care. He cared more that I had disdain for his school than he did for the safety of my son. Pandemic comes, 2020. Everybody gets booted out of school. My poor daughter did not get to walk in her class because she was the class of 2020. So she didn't get to experience graduation the way that she really wanted to. My son comes home. He is now home for almost 2 years. That's because after they released the ban to go back into schools, Jacob went back and he immediately contacted COVID. We didn't know he was lurking. My wife had taken a call from her doctor, in which the doctor, I guess, had told her that if she ever contacted COVID, that we might as well get our black suits ready because of the ailments that my wife suffered from, which fibromyalgia is one of them. And she was relaying this info to me while we was in our bedroom, and we didn't see that Jacob had snuck around the corner and he was listening. Now, guess what happens? Jacob goes into mass hysterics. Oh my God, I'm gonna kill my mom because I got COVID. This is gonna be over. And Dad, you got diabetes, you gonna die. So now he becomes afraid to go back to school, which he didn't want to go back to Sage in the first place at this point because he was getting beaten up every day and the current principal was doing nothing about it. So we end up sending him to Innovations because they had set it up for kids that did not want to go back into in-person learning at that point would be able to go ahead and stay at Innovations. So we signed up Jacob for that. That, my friends, was absolutely no better. Started out good, but because of the fact that it was all done over a computer, there was nothing there to keep the kids from wandering off and being on YouTube or whatever the case was. Even when we as parents is out here, but we have jobs to do too. We have to go to work and things of that nature. And they tell us at the school, well, we can't lock the computers down. I could tell you that was a lie because when Jacob did go to Oak Tree, after we pulled him from there, after he got a concussion, they gave him independent study where they gave him a Chromebook that was governed by the school. And the way I know that is because the teacher told me I can see everything that Jacob is doing when he's on this computer and I can lock him down. And that's what she did. She locked everything down except for what Jacob needed to do his work until school was over. According to Innovations, we can't do that. Long story short, with Innovations is we had a teacher that tried to lie on him in plain sight, and I was done with her. Because for whatever reason, Jacob became a target to her. And she called me one day and she says, Jacob has done no work. Now, this was an in-person learning day that Jacob asked to go to. If Jacob asked to go somewhere, the last thing he's going to do is act a fool. So Jacob asked to go to this in-person learning. And I get a call when school's almost out. Jacob has done nothing this whole entire day. So my question is, why did you wait 8 hours to call me and tell me that he's done nothing? Oh, he's done no work. He's been all over YouTube. He's just watching videos. He's doing nothing that I tell him to do. Her name was Sasan. But I guess she forgot that we have a tool that you gave us that we can track what our kids is doing with these Chromebooks. So I'm like, all right, you keep telling me what you're telling me. And then I got another teacher in the background that's totally berating Jacob, making fun of him, teasing him. Totally can hear it. She teased him in front of the whole class, making fun of him. I can hear it. Remember, I'm on the phone. And I'm pulling up his history. And she's like, and Jacob let me talk to my dad. She didn't want to let him talk to me. I said, you put him on the phone because it is his right to talk to me. You called me. If he wants to talk to me, it's his right to talk to me. She puts him on the phone. He goes, Dad, I admit I was on YouTube, but you know me. I was on there because of the noise. But if you can see it, I was doing my work. Now, Jacob is very auditory. Part of the reason why he has an IEP in school, which is an improvised educational plan, is because of the fact that Jacob is auditory and he rocks. And when he rocks, because we believe that he is on the autism spectrum, he has been tested for that, and they say he's on the spectrum, but these schools have drugged their feet and they won't test him. So now I got to go have him independently tested because the school's not doing their job to do so. But because there was some trauma that his mother faced when she was pregnant, Jacob soothed himself in the womb by rocking. And there's 3 different stages of his rock. 1 is a calm rock. That means he's just rocking because he's just rocking. 2 is a little bit more agitated, which means that something is wrong with him. You need to sit down and talk to him real quick so we can defuse this problem. And 3 is a full-on rock, that if he's sitting on a couch or anything against a wall, you will hear the thud going. And that means that Jacob is just done. All of this was put in his IEP. All of it got stripped out of his IEP without our knowledge. So when I had Ms. Williams, Ms. Shermine Williams from Sage, who is also a good psychologist, come to me the other day with these things, I'm like, all of this, Ms. Williams, was in his IEP. They stripped it out. This is how Jacob learns. But when Sasan is telling me he's doing nothing, I'm like, yeah, he is. He did this. He was doing this assignment. He did this assignment. I mean, look, I'm looking at like about 10, 12 assignments that he did while he's been there. She got mad. Because just like the people at Sage, all she wanted me to do was say that my son was wrong and that I was going to jump on his case. But I'm looking dead at his work that he's doing. And I'm listening to your co-teacher make fun of him in the background. But when I asked that question, she proceeded to hang up the phone in my face. Because we'll talk about the dangers of doing that in a minute because it gets worse. So on the Sage this year, they come to me and they said, we believe Jacob learns better in an in-person situation. We totally agree with that. Jacob is a sociable being. He does not do well when he's locked up by himself with nobody. But they said, we're going to go back to Sage. I said, over my dead body. I said, we've already done the Sage thing. My son's getting beat up. That school is horrible. It is the worst school in Palmdale. He is not going back. Let me show you how they fixed that. At his last IEP meeting before the end of school, they said, okay, here's what we're going to do. You guys can go ahead and put in an intra-district transfer. Now, what that means is we get a sheet. We got to go to Sage. We got to have the principal sign off on Sage, and we got to have the principal sign off at the other school that he's going to go to, that they are willing to accept him. And then if there is room, he can go to such a school. So we did that. We tried to get Jacob into Shadow Hills. Now, we took that paperwork over there in enough time throughout the summer. But then the person running his IEP says, if by some chance Jacob does not get into the school that he's applying for, since dad is adamant that he does not go back to Sage and worried about his safety, then we're going to just have him come back to Innovations until we can find him a school to go to. That, my friends, is not what happened. This is the first step to show you that they don't care about these kids. We didn't get notified by Shadow Hills that Jacob was not accepted in because there was no room until about a good 48 hours, a little bit less, from the beginning of school year. We called Innovations, we called Sage. We were like, this is not supposed to be where it is. It says he's coming to Sage. Sage says, yes, we see that he's registered here. Come get his book. I call Innovations. They're like, well, no, because since that's his school, it's always been the thing that he's going to go back to Sage. That was not what we discussed. So Jacob was now forced back into this horrible school. Now, I had a meeting with Jason DeVille. Now, Jason DeVille, I believe, is one of the heads, if not the head, of student services in the district. He used to be a principal here at David G. Millen. I had already had the pleasure of meeting DeVille because this teacher I just told you about, Sasan, the principal at Innovations, wanted to get to the bottom of it, so she called the meeting with me, him, and her. I had already met Jason DeVille, and I told him why I didn't want to send him back to Sage. Well, at the time that my wife was going to drop some papers off over at the district, and they said, well, you got to take this to the district now because no we can do, she bumps into Jason DeVille. Upon saying what her name was, Jason DeVille immediately remembered who I was and said that he listened to my podcast and told her a couple of things that she needed to do, which was to first reach out to Dr. Timothy Howell, who was now the brand new principal at Sage, and he believed that he was going to come in and save the world. Well, we tried that. This school is horrible. They don't answer the phones. My wife called 4 times on the day of school. Just like Jason DeVille said. He said, go ahead and call the first day. We want to get this in front of Dr. Howell. Never got the messages. So what you think happened? Everything I said that was going to go down why Jacobs never go back to Sage took place. He went back to Sage. The first week, he's come home complaining that he's getting hit, he's getting beat, he's getting bullied. He doesn't want to go back to school anymore. He started saying things like my stomach hurt, so he didn't have to go. He had migraines. Now, he does suffer from migraines because of 3 concussions, but they became more frequent because he didn't want to go back to school. So I started making these calls to the school. Several emails. Well, I get bombarded by responses, right? So I get Dr. Howell calling me saying, oh yeah, I don't play that. I'm going to do whatever it takes. And we want Jacob to be here and be safe. Within this day, I hear from here. I hear from Ronald Smothers, who's supposed to be one of the psychologists, saying the same thing. We want to support Jacob and we care about him. I heard from Miss Shermine Williams, who's also the psychologist, saying the same thing. Mr. McClam, I want to reach out to you. I want to make sure, I saw the email you sent to Mr. DeVille. I want to make sure you know where I'm at with Jacob and what my thoughts is. Matter of fact, Shermine Williams was the first call I received, followed by Ronald Smothers, and then Howell came in last. So I said, all right. And my son was being very optimistic. He said, well, Dad, let's just see where it goes. I know it's been a rough week, but let's see where it goes. It just keeps getting worse. So then he gets into it with this boy named Christian. Christian, we had problems with before. He is a known bully. And I've already rehabilitated my son because the one thing I didn't tell you is when Jacob was in the 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, he just lit people up. The calls that I got from the school was very different. It was, you need to come get your son because he's beating up this kid and he beat up this kid because this kid did this to him. And we took him out of Palm Tree for a year. I rehabilitated him. I said, you can't go doing this. But I looked at the principal, who was Mr. Gerald Luke. No problems with him. Mr. Gerald Luke actually does care about the kids. He's moved on to bigger, better things with African studies at the school district. But I said, I'm going to take him out of here. But if I send him back here and he is not the same person, he becomes it again, that's your fault. And that's exactly what happened. So as Jacob gets older, now he's bigger, he's more muscular. Oh, he can really hurt somebody now. We've had this talk. And as he went back to Sage, he goes, I'm going to keep being this person. Well, Christian starts bullying him. He goes to teachers and tell them they do nothing. He's come home every day with bruises. He's been jumped on. He's been pushed. He's been drugged on the ground. There's been horrible things said to him that not only I, but my wife never heard of and we would never dream of saying. One of them was a kid told him that his parents got a message from the condom company and saying that they're sorry they made a mistake. This is how cruel this kid is. He follows Jacob everywhere he goes and he has kids instigate these fights. I start making calls to the school. Then we all have a meeting. On that meeting, Howell tried to punk my son right there in front of me because supposedly there was some incident that took place that he asked my son about right in front of me. And when Jacob denies the things that was said, he tried to make it seem like that Jacob didn't want to accept responsibility and that he's lying about everything. This will be a common theme that goes along. So after that meeting, because I had already pulled Jacob out of the school. And that's why we was having this meeting, because I'm like, he ain't coming back here unless I get, some sense that he's going to be protected. So they're like, no, we want him to come back. You know, we're working on this kid. We're dealt with Christian. It's not going to happen again. The only person that's been there that I think was even halfway near the word sincere was his math teacher, which I can't remember her name, and Miss Williams. So we adjourn that meeting and we leave. Guess what happened the next day? Same stuff. Back in front of these principals again, pulling Jacob again. Then it really gets to the meat and potatoes of it, to where 2 weeks ago, I pulled him out completely. I said, you're done. And I sent a message to Jason DeVille. And I told him, I'm not sending my son back there because he's continuously getting hurt. And on that last day, I hadn't heard anything back from anybody. Jacob comes home. I pull him out that Monday because this was over the weekend. And I wasn't going to send him back because nobody had contacted me back. Now, as fate would have it, Jacob gets sick and he's home from Tuesday through Friday now because of the fact that he had come down with this stomach flu that's going around. Hadn't heard anything back. And then I finally hear back from Jason DeVille, and he says, we're going to get this handled, Mr. McClam. I'm going to go ahead and talk to Dr. Howell today, and Dr. Howell's going to call you. My son was home for 5 days sick, people. I never heard a word from Howell because nobody is doing anything about this Christian kid. And my son has told me profusely, Christian never gets chastised. He never gets dealt with. They put him in the same class as me. He sits right behind me. He's on a pleasure cruise in school, Dad. I'm telling you, nothing's happening to this kid. I start to believe that because of the fact that everybody wants to suspend Jacob, but nobody wants to suspend Christian. So finally, Jacob goes back to school that following Monday. I get a phone call from the nurse that says, is this Jacob's dad? I'm like, yes. She goes, Mr. McClam, your son has drugs. And I'm like, what kind of drugs? Oh, well, we found some Tums in his bag. First of all, that ain't drugs. And he said that he had an ibuprofen tablet. Second of all, that ain't drugs. When you call a parent and go, your kids have drugs, we're thinking weed, Quaaludes, pills, whatever it is, it's not going to be Tums or ibuprofen. So she's like, I said, you know what? I already have odds with the principal. You can just send him home as it is. I'm going to be talking to the district today. And she goes, would you like to talk to Dr. Howell? So I put him on the phone. This dude went off on me. This has become the first problem. Mr. McClam, your son has all this medicine up in here and he has Tums and he can't have that because of the policy. I said, you can send him home if you want. Well, that's up to you, sir. And I said, I'm going to tell you this right now. I said, you're supposed to call me back. It's been 5 days. We've heard nothing about this Christian kid. So I've told my son that since you're not protecting him, that he's got to protect himself. I'm not going to have him get physically injured up in there because he's not doing anything. Howell's response to me was, every man deserves to protect himself. That ain't the case of you're telling me. You want to walk him out of there because he tried to protect himself. So he further goes off on me because I said, it's been 5 days. Do you want to talk to your son? No, I want to talk to you. Why haven't you called me back in 5 days and let me know exactly what's going on with this Christian kid? His words to me was, I have better things to do. I'm busy. I don't have time to call you. I said, you had 5 days. His response is, you're tripping on a phone call, sir. Totally unprofessional, totally disrespectful. And I said, put my son on the phone. Oh, now you want to talk to your son. See, this is not how you talk to a parent, especially in these days and times when you have no idea who you are talking to or what's on the mind of the person to come do to you next. But that's how he talked to me. Told Jacob, you got to give it the medication. Why did you have it? Didn't know he had it. Yes, he told me that he wanted to carry Tums in his backpack and he wanted to take an ibuprofen because he gets a migraine, which I did tell Howell that the migraines that he suffers come from his school district. He didn't seem to care about that either. And I said, you got to give up the medicine, son. We'll come. Which goes, well, it's the only Tums you have in the house. We'll go pick it up, give it to the nurse. She has to hold it till we get there. So he gave that up. Then I get a call later that day saying that basically David's going to put him on some lieu of suspension because he had bucked up in the face of Miss Williams and of Smothers. Coming to find out, according to Jacob, which I believe, yes, Miss Williams was intimidated, or not intimidated, I should say, because if you meet her, you can't intimidate her. But she perceived that Jacob was trying to intimidate her, which he tells me he was not, which I believe that. He did tell me he was mad at Smothers because Smothers did nothing to Christian. They told them what was going on, but they put all the blame on Jacob. When I can tell you the whole incident that was going on because Jacob was texting me as it was happening. So Christian had one of his cronies come in and talk to Jacob and say, Jacob, do you want to fight Christian? Which Jacob said no. This is why my son has an iPad to connect to the internet in school, people, because I need to know what's going on at this time. And this is what he sends me when things is going down live. The kid further asked him, is there any time at any point that you will fight Christian? And my son says, no, I'm not fighting Christian unless I'm backed into a corner. The kid leaves, says whatever he's going to say to Christian, comes back in 2 minutes later and look at Jacob and go, Christian's waiting outside for you. When Jacob walked outside, Christian began to hit him, threw him to the ground, drug him, and punched him. But Jacob was the one that was hauled off to the office. Now, at the time, he said that Ms. Williams had said that he had heard at least something like, you won't believe what Jacob did. And then here came Smothers telling him, we're just going to suspend you. And Ms. Williams told me the only thing that Jacob seemed to understand or wanted to register was that the word suspension and that he was mad, which Jacob admitted to me. He goes, I saw red, I heard suspension because Smothers has done this to me before. Everybody's ganging up on me. I feel like I'm getting bullied by not only Christian, but also this administration, this school. So I had called Williams that day, Ms. Williams, and asked her to give me her story, which she did. We talked 45 minutes. I guess she passed on the word to Mr. Smothers that I wanted to talk to him. He called me that day. But I had listened to this man for 20 minutes run down my son. Nothing was Christian's fault. Everything was Jacob's fault. Jacob got more chances than any other kid in school, he says. Jacob needs to learn how to accept responsibility, he says. Jacob is the catalyst of this problem. Now, I sat there very calm and very professionally, and I listened to every lie this man, Ronald Smothers, uttered out of his mouth. When it was my turn to talk, I kept getting cut off because I didn't say what he wanted me to say. And what he wanted me to say was, yep, Jacob was wrong. We're going to have to get him punished. I'm going to handle it, Mr. Smothers. I'm sorry. He probably is the reason why Christian's beating his butt every day. But since I didn't say that, and I came out and I said, you see, we don't see it this way because I believe what my son is telling me. And I said, this kid is bullying him every single day. And he cussed me off. And he says, whoa, Miss McClam, I'm going to stop you right there. Right there, I'm going to stop you. I've known this young man for years, and he is not a bully. Just like that. That's the administration, people. This is why I believe my son that nothing's getting done to this kid because I just had an administrator tell me that this kid's not a bully. Also, he broke the school rules because even though I know it's this kid, Christian, nobody else has confirmed that because by school law, he can't confirm it. But he just did. Miss Williams, and as much as I can't stand them, Howell, all of them, none of them has ever confirmed that it was Christian except for him. But you see, Smothers and all these educated people are supposed to be so smart, yet they're so dumb. So since they don't understand what the word bully means, let me read it to them right from the Webster's Dictionary. A person who habitually seeks to harm or intimidate those whom they perceive as vulnerable or bully. 110th degree Christian. Habitually seeks to harm. He tries to beat up my son every day and puts hands on him every day. Or intimidate. He intimidates all the time. He gets in his face. He has kids get in his face. Those they perceive as vulnerable. Vulnerable because I told my son to take the high road and not to put his hands on people, but to believe in the system because at the end, violence is not going to solve anything. That's what made Jacob vulnerable. So then I told him, I said, you're going to stop cutting me off. I haven't cut you off. I said, you've cut me off every time I went to say something because I'm not saying what you want me to say. I said, but I'm going to tell you this. I check on my son more than I should because I'm afraid that he may think it's too much and he's going to commit suicide. And I'm trying to make sure that he is not going to be the next kid who decides that he's had enough of your bullying and Christian's bullying, and he picks up a gun, and I'm getting a call saying that my son is walking through the school halls shooting people. I'm trying to prevent all of that. You know what he says to me? Oh, we need to have Jacob obsessed for threat to himself and threat to others. He says, no, we don't. I said, I got that handled. We need to have that obsessed. No, we don't. Well, I'm going to write it down here that I offered it and that you declined it. See, people, it wasn't that he cared about Jacob. He didn't give two craps about Jacob. It was a CYA moment. Because if Jacob did kill himself, he knows that there's a lawsuit I can file about that. Or if Jacob came through with a gun and shot up the school, he knows that people's going to go to the administration and say, what's the problem? And then when me and his mom are still on the news pouring out all of the bullying that he has now received from Christian, and now, in my belief, the bullying that he's getting from the administration, he wants to be able to throw his hands up and says, we offered this service, but they didn't want it. He kept pushing me and pushing me and pushing me. So I finally said this. A week prior to all this happening, we get a phone call. There's a kid that died at Sage. Let's face it, people, the kid committed suicide. And I can tell you from the conversations I've had with this administration and what I've said to them, it's real. He committed suicide. And so since he kept pushing me, I said to him, I don't know what threat assessment you do, but it didn't seem to work on the student that committed suicide last week. So what do you make it think is going to help Jacob? And in that case, Smothers got real mad. He was already mad because I told him that his boy Christian was a bully. Now he's really mad because everybody has been attacking the district about this kid committing suicide all week. Well, you don't want to talk about Jacob. Say, oh, this is about Jacob because you just asked me a question and I answered it. Well, I'm going to hang up the phone now, sir. Good day. Hung up the phone. Fast forward to the meeting I had Thursday the 20th with Howell and DeVille. DeVille decides that he wants to email me, and he tells me that he was sorry that I wasn't able to get the resolution that I wanted to get, and that he wanted to have a meeting at Sage with myself, himself, and Dr. Howell. Because of the way that Howell had been very disrespectful, I was done with him. See, people, I have my limits too. I'm a very kind guy. I'm a nice man. But when you mess with my kid, I have a side that nobody knows. And I know when to keep myself out of problems. And I knew if I got in front of this dude feeling the way I was feeling, it could come out really bad. So I wanted to avoid that whole situation. But DeVille kept pushing it. He sent me 2 emails saying that he wanted to have a meeting. On my first response, I pretty much said I didn't want anything to do with Howell or Smothers. I told him everything that went down because since Smothers and Howell were such in the right, Jason DeVille, being their boss, didn't know anything about it. And I said, I'm not going to deal with this anymore. DeVille comes back and he pretty much tells me, well, the meeting still stands. This is Jacob's school that he's zoned for, and we think that this is the best place for him to be. And finally, I came back and I said, fine, we'll meet. I'll bring Jacob with me. And I said, but beforehand, if I'm not listened to, if I'm disrespected in any way, I will get up and walk out and end the meeting. And then I guess I will just let the courts and the judges figure out where I'm going to place my son, because I'm not ever sending him back to this school ever again. This was a one-shot deal. And I said, I don't feel like that they care about Jacob at all. So we have this meeting. Howell already walks in with a sourpuss looks like he just wants to end the world. I guess he's trying to intimidate me by this frown he has on his face, but it's doing nothing to deter me. If you listen to Jason DeVille, he thinks that Howell is Jesus. He thinks this man walks on water. And he starts this meeting out with, he wanted to have this meeting in a common ground between us and see if we can get Jacob back in school. And he wanted Jacob back that day. And yes, folks, I have no shame in telling you what I said because I went off. I did call Howell Jesus. I said, I think they think you walk on water. I did tell DeVille that they put him so high up on a pedestal. And Jason DeVille's like, we don't put him high on a pedestal. Yeah, you do, because you sing this man's praises and he's done nothing. Oh, well, he has the lowest suspension rate because he invented this program in lieu of suspension. First of all, he didn't invent nothing. I can't help it that Howell just is the one who brought it to California. Congratulations, decades later. But I had this same thing when I was in school. It was called in-school suspension. They called it in-school community service. They called it trash pickup. It was all in lieu of suspension. Because if we were doing that, we were at school serving what our suspension time would be before, middle, or after school. So he didn't invent that. And I said that. So he ain't invent this. Dude, this has been going around since I've been in school over 20-something plus years ago. Jason Bill, well, he brought it to California. We'll say that. You act like that he went out and pulled some peas, threw it in some water and some milk, and boiled it and called it pea soup, and he invented pea soup. No, pea soup was already invented. He just maybe added to it. And I told him, I said, I'm not going to deal with these principles. I understand what my son is saying. The way that he treats me is the only way that I have to discern about how he's treating my kid. Now, before then, I did say, because he had a teacher named Sergeant Adams, and I said, you are lucky that I haven't came here and gotten in Sergeant Adams' face because he's been in my son's face and he spat on him. Not a threat. I also said that I know for a fact that if I was in the street and Hal was in the street and we were having this same conversation, that there was no way that he would talk to me or disrespect me the way he did on the phone. Not a threat. But as I continued, and I did say that Hal was disrespectful, that he was a foul-mouthed principal, and that I don't see him turning anything around in this school, he got mad. I'm not going to sit here and be berated. I'm not going to be disrespected. I'm not going to sit here and take this, and you don't want to meet me in the street. That is a direct threat. I looked directly at DeVille and said, now your principal has threatened me. That's bodily harm at this point. He says, I don't want to meet him in the street. So where I'm from, my friend, that is fighting words. That's a threat. What you going to do about it? Just like these school districts do, he gaslit the situation. Now everything became my fault. Well, he felt berated, so he had to leave. Berated, why? Because I'm telling him the truth? Well, didn't you feel it when you walked in this morning, Miss McClam? Didn't you feel the kids? The energy had changed. Nobody was cursing. Nobody was doing anything. Everybody was so relevant. It was 8 o'clock in the morning. School don't start for 45 minutes. This school is just short of this. Give me some graffiti. Give me some TP. Let's get some kids in the middle of the courtyard making out. Q, Welcome to the Jungle by Guns N' Roses, and we got East Side High all over again. And if you guys are lost on that reference, there was a movie called Lean on Me, and the subject name was Joe Clark, real principal, went and took over East Side High School in Patterson, New Jersey, turned that whole school around because Joe Clark cared about his children. Howell does not. Joe Clark cared about protecting these kids so much that he went to jail for them by locking the doors to keep the drug dealers and kids like Christian out of school. Howell won't do that because he don't care. And I'm going to tell you why he doesn't care. And all the parents need to listen to me. It's one word of why you keep seeing these bad teachers. It's one word of why they don't fire these teachers. There's one word of why you've got teachers sleeping with your kids and they don't fear any repercussion. And there is one word why a punk like Howell can sit there and threaten me in front of his boss and nothing happens. And it's called tenure. It can cost a school board up to $1 million to fire a teacher. I know that firsthand from teachers. So the school boards care more about their pockets than they do about your kids. I'll give you one example. Even though it happened in 2019, why does it have to happen twice? Palmdale teacher placed on administrative leave for second time after allegedly hurling racial slurs at Latino middle school students. Twice this happened. Put on administrative leave means they get paid to stay home because it costs too much to fire them. 4 years ago, there was an incident at a school called Summer Wind. I reported on it where you had 3 teachers and a principal that decided to hold up a noose in school. Everybody was irate. Black people and white people. You saw all of the black activists from all over LA show up for that. Administrative leave while we do an investigation. Those teachers, we don't know what happened to them, but I do know that the principal fled to a whole nother state somewhere where she's probably teaching. I know the teacher somewhere is probably teaching because nobody learns. So I asked DeVille again, what are you going to do? Because your principal has just threatened me in front of you. Well, you was threatening teachers. This is why, folks, I record things, but they wouldn't let me record in the school when I talk to the school district. What do you mean I threatened you? Well, you said that you was going to beat up Sergeant Adams. That ain't what I said. I said, you're lucky I haven't been in his face because he spat in the face of my son. That is not a threat. Well, you threatened Dr. Hall because you said you was going to meet him in the street. That is not what I said. I said, I know that if Howell and myself was in the street having this same conversation, that he would not talk to me and disrespect me the way that he has on the phone. Not a threat. And the only reason that he felt supercharged to threaten me in front of Jason DeVille was these reasons. One, he knew Jason DeVille wasn't going to do nothing because of that magical word tenure. And two, do you think he stuck around after he said that? No, he got up and walked right out the room, which he knew he probably should have. Because he didn't want to stick around to see what the repercussions are going to be, right? I have too much to lose to stand up and hit a punk like that. If you want to be a punk and you want to threaten me in front of your boss, nothing happens to you, I ain't going to stoop to that level. But however, I will warn you of this. What if I was a totally unhinged parent? And parents, you need to be aware of this because not only is the kids bringing harm to your school, so is the administration. Now, what if I would have been a totally unhinged parent? He don't know me from Adam. He doesn't know what's in my car because my car wasn't searched on the way in. There's no reason to search it, right? I could have had all kinds of guns in my ride. Now I'm already upset that you keep messing with my son, so we already have an escalated situation. Now you want to threaten me? I don't want to see you on the street? Now you just further escalated it. So now I got guns in my ride, right? So now I'm going to go out, grab my gun, come back into school. Now you just put yourself at risk. You put the front staff at risk. You put students at risk. You put everybody at risk that's in that school because you want to be ignorant. Now, of course, I'm not that kind of parent. I'd rather fight my battles legally. I'd rather tell you guys these stories so that you can call your school districts or even this one. I'd rather use my journalistic talents and get news crews involved, which I have already called several. That's how I choose to fight this battle. However, many other people that you don't know may not choose to fight this. This is why, folks, this school shooting is going to happen again. It almost has. Here's something they want to hide from you. March 6, 2023. And we're almost done with this. There was a social media thread that was made to Highland High School, but they thought it was made to Highland High School in Bakersfield. They later discovered that it wasn't a thread that was made to Highland High School in Bakersfield, but yet it was made to Highland High School in Palmdale, the same school we're talking about now, where the kid went and shot Robert Dominguez 5 years ago. The only reason why that shooting did not take place at Highland High was because Bakersfield PD called Los Angeles County PD and told them about the threat, and they were told that the person who did it was already in custody. So they found out who it was by tracking him down on social media, and they had already arrested the person. But I guarantee you, if that shooting would have went off, it was not going to be like it was 5 years ago. It wasn't going to be a target just of one or two people. There was going to be some injuries that day. So, heed my words, it's already tried to happen again. And here's the worst mistake that they did. They did not take the threat as credible. Man, even in law enforcement, they tell you any threat of bodily harm, you have to take as credible. This is how a lot of these kids are getting by with stuff like that. So how do I answer Howell's threat? Since they're not going to do anything about it. I have filed formal complaints on Howell, Smothers, and DeVille. But since this cat has threatened me with bodily harm if I met him in the street, that means that the school district will have nothing to do with this because it would technically, right, be off their grounds. I can link this to this because there would be no other reason for him to ever want to try and do bodily harm to me because I don't know him from Adam. So I feel like I have the right to answer it this way. It is administrators like you, sir, that causes school shootings. It's administrators like you that cause parents to come in and beat teachers up. It's administrators like you is the reason why we have such a high suicide rate among students in school. These students go through enough as it is, and to be bullied not only by the children, but also by an administration like yours is uncalled for and is horrible. I will never let my son set foot in your school ever again. You don't ever have to worry about that. He's not protected there. You have proven that. So has Smothers. So has DeVille. All DeVille wanted to do was take up for you like you walk on water when you just threatened a parent right there that could have put his whole entire school in jeopardy, but you guys don't care about that. It's 2023. Are you not looking around what's going around in the world today? People is killing people for far less. We can't afford to just continue to piss people off and figure that they're just going to go away. I have to protect my own son. So until he either gets in the school that we register him for, he ain't coming back to Sage. Sage is the worst school. It has the lowest marks. It has all kinds of reviews that they didn't want to pay attention to, neither did Howell, which I should have told you guys that. I'll post those in the show notes. There is also a federal report that says that most school shooters were bullied. They didn't want to listen to that either. So if you're going to be a principal, Howell, I'll suggest that you actually take the children first and you don't threaten parents again. But since you threaten me bodily injury, because that's what that is, you go, you don't want to meet me in the street, and I'll just leave you with this. You don't know me from Adam. You don't know me what I'm capable of. You don't know what I came from. You don't know my background. I've kind of told you a little bit about that in my neighbor dispute episode if you want to go back and listen to that. But I'm going to tell you this since you threatened me. Be careful of the tree that you decide to climb, because when you get to the top, it might not be what you expected. All right, guys, sorry for the little longer episode, but this was a must to tell you. This is what my son is going through in the Palmdale School District. If your children is in this horrible, horrible, horrible school district, you need to show up to every meeting. You need to challenge every teacher. If your kid is in Sage, you need to find out what's going on, because the administration there, with the exception is Sherman Williams. Everybody else, and maybe Country, but everybody else needs to go. You guys need to be in tune with what's happening in your school districts. This is what's going on. My kid has already suffered 3 concussions. He's already suffered stomach issues, all from this school. And believe me, we're legally looking into it. But he's already suffered this so that hopefully I can tell you this story and your kids don't have to do the same. All right, guys, thank you for tuning into this one. I hope that it was enlightening. I hope that you took away something from it. I hope that you are looking more into your school districts. This is what's going on. We have to be the ones to stop the next school shooter if we can. Coming your way next week, my author is going to be Becky Parker Geis. She wrote a book on audiobooks. She's going to tell you why, as consumers, we should listen to audiobooks. And she's going to tell authors out there why you should have one. If you're fed up with Audible, or you think that it's not giving you what you need monetarily, she has the solution for you. So you want to make sure to turn into her next week. And then the week after that is my extraordinary person. You're going to hear from Amber Powers. Amber lost 2 family members in the Jonestown massacre, but then she found herself in a cult all of her own. She's going to tell you all about that and how she got out, and now how she's surviving and what she's doing now. You don't want to miss those. And I'll remind you, coming October 15th, we're going to have Extinguished with myself and LaDonna Humphrey. First case there is going to be the Superbike murders. You don't want to miss that. All right, guys, I hope you are all being good, being safe, and being good to yourself and each other. And as always stay humble. An act of kindness can make someone's day. A little love and compassion can go a long way. And remember that there is an extraordinary person in all of us. I'll catch you on the next one.
Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe. Join us on social media. One link to the link tree has it all. Feel free to drop us a line at truecrimeandauthors@gmail.com. Cover art and logo designed by Arslip. Sound mixing and editing by David McClam. Intro script by Sophie Wild and David McClam. Theme music, Legendary by New Alchemist. Introduction and ending credits by Jackie Voice. See you next time on True Crime, Authors, and Extraordinary People.